Western ideas of social justice and gender equality. We'll see how this is articulated in a different vocabulary in the past. The values are the same, so think of it as a spoiler. What I'm going to tell you is that the values are the same, but the words used are very different. Now, when we start thinking of Indian civilization, what do we think of? The first thing we think of, is the Rigveda. So let me start with the Rigveda, the foundation of Indian philosophy, and just take a look at these two shlokas. These are shloks 1 and 2 from book 1 of the Rigveda, the first mandal of the Rigveda as it is called. The Sanskrit that you see in front of you means in very simple terms that there are people who are gathered around a fire. These are Purohits and Rishis of old, and these are Purohits and Rishis of new gods. So what does this whole idea say? What do they want to say? Around this fire are gathered people who worship old gods. Around this fire are gathered people who worship new gods. Agni purvebhi rishibhi idyo nutanehi ut sadevam eha vakshati. All of us are gathered together to worship all gods, old and new. Can you find a greater statement of openness than this willingness to include everyone in your ideas of veneration, in your ideas of worship? So this is to give you an entry into the way things worked in Indic philosophy. From time immemorial, India has stood at a crossroads of great migrations of people. Movements of migration in prehistoric times are of course there, but even let's think of historic times, let's think of Harappa, let's think of the modern period. So there was a huge exchange of goods, services and ideas. So India was at the center of what is called the Indian Ocean littoral. And around this Indian Ocean littoral, I don't have a map here, but you can imagine it, are some of the oldest civilizations of the world. Some of the oldest civilizations near the Gulf, in China, in India. So the oldest civilizations are around this Indian Ocean littoral. And India has been, I may call it a kind of exchange bureau of ideas. If it was an exchange bureau of ideas, what was its USP? What did it think? How did it kind of, give its thoughts a structure? To give its thoughts a structure, the one word that we can use is dharma. In India, there has been a unique understanding of dharma which has developed in a very, very open society with a lot of thinking, with a lot of inputs from everywhere. So what is dharma? Many of you may answer that dharma is religion, but dharma is not religion. Dharma it comes from the word dhri, which means to uphold. Not only to uphold, but to bear, support, animate, nourish, everything, all creation. What values does it stand for? This dhri, which sustains everything. Dharma, arth, kam and moksha are the 4 aspirations that we have in the Indic way of living. That is what we want. What is, all 4 of them, I'm sure you're familiar with them, but moksha is liberation from the cycle of birth, death and rebirth. Arth is material goods and kam is enjoyment of those material goods. So if you think of dharma, if you think of dharma as a fruit, the tree on which it is hanging is in the realm of, moksha. But the tree itself has branches and roots and flowers which are in the area of arth and kam. So dharma operates both in the material world and it operates in the realm of moksha. Why was it created? There is a very nice story in the Upanishads about why dharma was created. Brahma in a playful mood created all of the cosmos and people in it. But then, what was to govern it? So to govern the people of this cosmos was created this thing which we call dharma. It is due to this dharma that the weak, physically, socially, economically powerless can emerge victorious. Now what is this? That's exactly what we want social justice to be. So the general framework of humanity is, there's some things that all of us can believe in, and those are, this is the framework of dharma. This is the framework of what we would call social justice today. Humanity, sincerity, decorum, harmony with natural laws. I think anybody, no matter what their religious beliefs may be, will agree on all these things, and that is the USP of dharma. But let us think of dharma in a slightly more detailed way. So there is something which is called reet. There is something which is called satya and dharma. What is reet? Reet is the natural laws of the cosmos. Reet is something which is, it comes into contact. So reet, according to, there was a 11th century great commentator, last great commentator on the Rig Veda. His name was Sayan. So Sayan Bhashya is something that we read to understand the Rig Veda. So according to Sayan, reet is thought. It comes into contact with the world to become satya, which is word. When satya is practiced, it becomes dharma. So reet is inner realization. It is something which is. Satya is external manifestation and dharma is action. That's the world that we live in. There are many philosophical ramifications of this, but for our purposes, we have to understand dharma in some particular ways. These are 5 types of dharma. Raj dharma is the dharma of the king or the Swami. And remember, most of the time that we are talking about monarchies. And we are talking about kings who used to rule kingdoms. And there was a very set way in which they were to operate. Raj dharma was something which has been spoken about in our Itihas, in our Quran, in all our Smritis in great detail. So Raj dharma is the dharma of the king. Apat dharma is what you can do in an emergency. Basically, it means that all rules are suspended. Moksha dharma is for you individually to attain moksha. Vishesh dharma is your dharma, depending on who you are, what you are doing and what your situation is. For example, I am married, I have a child, so I have a dharma as a wife, I have a dharma as a mother, and suppose I am a doctor, then I have a dharma as in the medical profession, so that is Vishesh. Therefore, you see 2 of them highlighted, Raj dharma and Samanya dharma. We are going to talk about these 2. Why are we going to talk about these 2? Because it's society, it's people, with good actors, bad actors, everything. So how are we going to maintain order in this society? Samanya dharma, the last one, is that which is the duty of everyone. Samanya dharma is something which is applicable to everyone. Things like forbearance, self-control, don't steal, be clean, control your senses, be discerning, etc., etc. And there are many different lists of the things that are included in Samanya dharma. They are basically more or less the same. So the one which I want to tell you about, the list I want to talk about of Samanya dharma, is the one which is given in the Yagyavalkya Smriti. In the Yagyavalkya Smriti, what are these duties, this dharma, this action which is applicable to all and at all times? Do not harm living beings. Speak the truth. Do not accept undeserved wealth. Be clean. Control the senses, both internal, the mind, and external, like eyes and ears. Charity, to the extent possible. Help people with food, shelter, security, and relief from difficulties. Discipline the body. Help relieve the distressed of their troubles. Be untruffled in soul even when harmed. These 9 parameters of dharma are applicable to everyone, from those with the highest status in society to those with the lowest status in society. Now, did you find some kind of resonance in these words with the ideas of social, political, cultural equality and social justice? Yes, of course, there is. The whole thing is to live a disciplined life and to help those who are less fortunate. Now, if that is Samanya dharma, and if everyone follows Samanya dharma, wonderful, no problem. But does it really happen like that? It doesn't. Because there are people who will not follow dharma. So, Indian philosophy has thought about this. What are we to do if people do not follow these very, very good blueprints that have been given, and if they behave in ways that are bad for society and for others? What do we do? For that, we'll have to do a little bit of a diversion, but not much. Just for 5 minutes, I want to tell you something about the Indic theory of the formation of the state. So how were states, kingdoms, how were they formed? Why were they formed? If people were living in a very organized way and harmoniously and happily, prosperously, why was it formed? No. The point is that people do not live in this very harmonious and orderly fashion. There is always chaos, there are always problems, and there is the problem of Matsya Nyaya. Now, what is Matsya Nyaya? So, Matsya Nyaya, the quotation I have given you is from the Arthashastra, which is one of the biggest political science treatises that we have in our own philosophy, although you will find this everywhere. Read the Mahabharata Sabha Parv, you will find it. Read any of the Smritis, you will find it. So, what is this? People were tired of Matsya Nyaya. Big fish eating the small fish. What does that mean? Powerful people exploiting the weak. Isn't that exactly what we want to stop when we think of social justice? Of course it is. So to stop this Matsya Nyaya, so you see that at the base, the foundation of the state in Indic philosophy is the idea of the powerless, is the idea of the weak, is the idea of helping them. So that is from where this whole basis of social justice can be seen to be a part of the foundational ideas of Indic political theory. So the king emerges to stop Matsya Nyaya and to stand for the weak, to take care of the weak, emerges the king. And many of you may be familiar with the whole concept of the Sengol and the controversy about the Dand or the Sengol, which happened when it was placed in the new parliament. But it is a very, very strong part of the way in which Indic theory of state is organized, because the king emerges to do this harmonizing and organizing of society by force if necessary. But this force is only for justice. The Sengol or the Dand, force, is just for justice. It is the duty of the king to do what? Rakshan, Palan, Poshan and Yogakshem. So that's pretty obvious. Protect, take care, and Yogakshem will mean what you have already achieved, at least that much should not go. I wish I had the time to take you further into Indic political theory, Rakshan, Palan, Labh, and the different areas in which they operate, but we'll stop over here because we just want to know about social justice, about dharma. We want to know how is society organized. So the king or the Swami upheld dharma. And this is across the board, anything that you read, any smriti that you read, itihas, Puran that you read, it is the first duty of the king to uphold dharma. Now, I will also ask you to look at the second shlok which is there. Praja sukhe sukham ragyah, prajanam cha hite hitam. Nata priyam hitam ragyah, prajanam tu priyam hitam. Now, this means that it is only in the happiness, in the benefits and all those things which are dear to the people of the kingdom that the prosperity, happiness and welfare of the king lies. Now, if this is not a statement of social justice, I don't know what is. Because over here, what are we saying? That it is the duty of the king to take care of the needs, the desires, the interests of the people that he is looking after. So the same ideas are found in the Mahabharata, the Manusmriti, the Thirukural. Whatever you read, you will find the same ideas. Well, let me give you some practical examples. I have been taking you through lots of roads of theory. What about practice? So how do we know that this actually happened? Or is it just in the realm of, theory? People wrote a few things and then forgot about it. Not true. Because we have historical evidence about how Indian kings behaved. I am a researcher of the Mauryan period, so I will take you back right there at once. Not just because I am a researcher of the Mauryan period, but because the first time the Indian subcontinent was brought together politically
was by Chandragupta Maurya. So it is, we can call ourselves the modern Mauryans. A lot of things that were there in the Mauryan state, it was a multi-ethnic, multilingual, huge state with almost the same boundaries as us. Of course, we've lost a large part of that Bharat, except for the Cholas, Cheras, Pandyas and Satyaputras in the south. You can think of the entire country of India as you know it today, plus Pakistan, plus Afghanistan, plus Bangladesh as part of the Mauryan Empire. So these were proto-modern Indians. And how did the king approach the welfare of the people? For one, the Arthashastra written by Kautilya was the blueprint according to which the Mauryans actually operated. And within the Arthashastra, I've given you some examples, and there are many, many, many examples of the way in which the welfare of the people is to be kept first. We find inscriptions, Mauryan inscriptions from Afghanistan to Madurai, from Saurashtra to Bangladesh. We have Mauryan inscriptions on rock edicts, pillars, etc. Many of them deal with these issues of social justice. So there are things like providing free medicines, getting wells dug, planting trees, giving charity to people. All these things we find in Mauryan inscriptions. A very interesting thing which I will point out, so Kautilya was also a financial genius. So there are sections on kosh or budget in the Arthashastra. There are some revenue items and there are some expenditure items. So what is the biggest expenditure item? Charity. And what is charity? Charity is to be given to those who do not have enough. I'll give you an example of the way in which charity was practiced. So for example, if they were poor widow women who had no source to maintain themselves. So the Mauryan state would give them cotton thread. They would weave textiles from it and then sell those textiles. So the thread was free for them, and what they gained from the sale of those textiles was their income. So this is one way in which charity was run. Another thing is giving of grains, rice, wheat, etc. We find this again from inscriptions that have survived from that period. During times of famine or during times when the crop was not good, the state would give food to everyone. So this is like, we do it even today. We give free food, free rice, free wheat. It is all in the interest of social justice, and so it was for the Mauryans. Now, the Mauryans were not the only ones. We have those also, the very famous Cholas. They are also famous for devolution of political power. The Panchayat system, which was political power at the grassroots, was one of the things that the Cholas are really famous for. Arthashastra and the Mauryans also had Gram Panchayats, but we don't have any inscriptions. But for the Cholas, we have very, very detailed inscriptions about this devolution of political power so that power could reach down to the absolute grassroots level, and then what would be served? But just social justice, because you see, we've already defined social justice as equal political and social power to everyone in society. So now I have given you two examples. I have given you a glowing picture. Wow, how wonderful was it all? And then you must be thinking in your head, but what about the caste system? We have to, if you talk about India, you cannot escape the caste system in any way. Whether or not this is correct and it's the only prism through which we should look at India is a separate issue, and I would like to, maybe address it some other time. But for today, what about the caste system? Did the caste system make this kind of hierarchical society where some people were at the top and there was a gradation, and there were some people at the bottom and they had nothing? That is what we have been taught. That is what a lot of theorizing about India has been across 2 centuries. But it is my firm belief that we need to do a relook. So what was the system in India? The system was one of Kul, Jati and Sampradaya. Kul was your family and your big extended family, not just nuclear family. What was your Jati? Your Jati was people who did the same thing as you, so it was heavily occupation based. And to that extent, it also became birth based because you normally did what your parents were doing. And that was par for the course. It is par for the course even today, although maybe to a lesser extent. And Sampradaya was your ways of worship. So maybe, you know, you were a Vaishnav or a Shaiv or a Shakt, and within these also we have many different sampradayas. So this rooted you firmly in your family, your jati and your sampradaya. So where does the Varn system come in then? The Varn system was the theoretical model which was tried to be fitted onto this actual practical thing that was happening. So this was classification of jatis. Classification of jatis, Brahman, Vaishya, Shudra, Kshatriya, all four of them. The system was an open one and it was a flexible one. So take my favorite Mauryan period for example. Chandragupta Maurya was a Shudra. So he was not a Kshatriya, he was not a Brahmin. Chandragupta Maurya was a Shudra. And his Senapati, Pushyamitra Sung, and don't confuse him with the one who actually overthrew the Mauryans, because there was one Pushyamitra Sung who was also the Senapati of Chandragupta Maurya. He was a Brahmin. So you will ask, why was he the Senapati? Then very famously we have the Girnar inscription in which certain ministers of Chandragupta Maurya are mentioned. So very importantly, the viceroy of that place of Saurashtra was Pushyagupta. Who was he? He was a Vaishya. So what I am trying to say is that the rigidity of the structure, that if you are born in this family, you have to do this, did not exist. Who was a Brahman? Was a Brahman only by birth? By birth, perhaps, but he had to prove himself through his karma and through his gun. There's a lot of, lot of times the Bhagavad Gita is quoted. That's a very casteist kind of scripture, and you look at where it says that the Varna system must be upheld. Now the Varna system must be upheld, yes. So if we think of it as birth-based, rigid and exploitative, we don't like it. It's totally against social justice. But was it? It was not birth-based. If you try to read chapter 18 of the Bhagavad Gita, it will tell you how Varna came into being. What was it based on? It was based on gun and karma. And what are the guns? Three guns, Sat, Raj and Tamas. So it was the balance of your Sat, Raj and Tamas which made you one of the four Varnas. And then you had to take some actions. It was karma. You had to do some things to be a Kshatriya or to be a Brahman. You had to do some things. I will just also mention that Valmiki and Vedvyas were both Shudras. They have written the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. The Ramayana and the Mahabharata are the two pillars of Indic civilization. We would be nowhere without it. So from where does one imagine that all the very most important things were done by the Brahmins, or that there was a hierarchical system, anti-social justice? I'm afraid it was not true. Again, I will give you an example of the Arthashastra and the Mauryans. So the Arthashastra defines the four Varnas, and it tells you what each Varna must do. So you will not find the first three at all surprising, which is more or less okay, the same thing as we understand. But the Shudras, what were they to do? The Shudras were told to do Karu, Kushilav, Karma. What does this mean? Karu, Kushilav, Karma. Karu is doers. And what were they? They were what we would today call scientists, artisans, people who dealt in spreading news, actors, people who were singers, artists. So the Shudras were the doers of society as far as the Arthashastra is concerned. And Kautilya has praised Shudras for being the best soldiers in the army. So the army consisted not just of Shudras, but Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. And Kautilya has praised Shudras as being the best soldiers in the army. If any of you have read that much poor, much maligned Purush Suktam, the Purush Suktam tells you, and this is what I was also taught, that look how horrible these Indians were. What do they say? That the Brahmins are the mouth of the cosmic Purush, the arms are the Kshatriya, the thighs are the Vaishya, and the feet, very bad, they were the Shudras. Now one, I don't subscribe to feet being bad, because if we cut off our feet, we would all be, stationary. We wouldn't be able to move. And that is exactly the point. If you read the Purush Suktam and the Arthashastra together, it just falls into place. The Shudras were the doers. And that is why they made the cosmic Purush move. So this is a very, very kind of huge topic. To come back to our idea of social justice and dharma. So if there were four Varnas, divided or organized in whichever way, did it encapsulate them all? Yes, indeed. So I will just again read out a very small thing from the Vajasneyi Sanhita. So what does it say about dharma? Give our love to Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. Give me love through love. Let everyone, the whole of creation, see me with the eye of the sun as a friend. Let me see everyone with the eye of the sun as a friend. Let one protect another in every way. I can go on and on, but I think you get the idea. So dharma encapsulated all four varnas and actually jatis. Kul, jati, sampradaya were the important things which kept this whole organization going. And for this kul, jati, sampradaya, what did you have? You had what we have already seen, that is samanya dharma. That is something that everyone had to do. And vishisht dharma, which was your particular dharma as you were in a particular specific situation. So we have tried to look at dharma as something which can be defined with the universal values of social justice. We are caught in this trap of modern vocabulary. If we are to talk about, talking about social justice and dharma is just not acceptable. I am sure you would not have heard too many talks on this, because they are seen to be absolutely against each other, hostile to each other. If you have dharma, you can't have social justice. I hope that the past few minutes has given you some new things to think about and some new ways in which to understand that universal values were there in the past also. The ideas of justice, equality, and care for the poor, distressed, these values and these ideas were very much there. I have given you the theory and I have given you the practice. And now we will move on to gender equality. Now that's another, a very good stick to beat the Indians with. That, oh my God, there was sati in your country and you burnt widows and you had parda and women had no access to education. And it was the colonizers who came in and who gave you some kind of semblance of self-respect for women. Now, is that true? Is that true at all? So we have already seen that the great goals of society were dharma, arth, kam and moksha. So was it actually available to everyone? Dharma, arth, kam and moksha? Dharma, arth, kam and moksha were actually available to both women and men. So they could aspire to moksha. Yes, you could aspire to moksha as a woman. Could you aspire to material wealth? Could you aspire towards enjoyment? Could you aspire to following dharma? Yes, indeed, you could do all of that. So that gives you a basis. Now, what about some ideas about men and women and their place in society? So, let me take you to this one. This is a Chola statue of Ardhanarishwar. So, you will see half of it is a man and half of it is a woman. So, this is Shiv and Shakti together. So, this is the Indian idea of the relation between the sexes, relation between the genders. It's not the hostile and very, very, conflict-ridden theory. Marxist theory is what? It's conflict theory. There are men and there are women, and men exercise power over women and women have to fight back. So you have to keep fighting all your life. A woman has to become more of a man than a man and beat him down. And we have the first wave and the second wave and the third wave, and it gets more and more radical every time. The radical feminists think that all the problems in the world are caused by men. So ideally for them, there should be no men in society. Now that's not really a very sensible way in which to run society. There are men and there are women, and we have to get along well somehow. This is a beautiful model. Stree and Purush fuse together to become one, and they are the unit of society. I will again, go back to the Rig Veda, because it is the Rig Veda which is the foundational composition, the foundational ideas of ancient India and even modern India, if you think about it, come from this. So the first thing I will talk to you about is something called the Devi Suktam. The Devi Suktam is from the 10th mandal of the Rig Veda. It is there, there are many shakhas of the Rig Veda, mostly lost. We just have two left, the Bhaskal Shakha and the Shakal Shakha. It appears in the 10th mandal of both. And why do I think that it is so important? This is the Devi Suktam, parts of it. This is not the whole thing. So this was composed by a young woman, I repeat, who was the daughter of the sage Ambrin. So her name was Vak Ambrini. She is significantly both the Devata in Rig Vedic terms means the divine subject, as well as the composer. So she identifies herself with the cosmos. So it is the bursting forth of the essence of Advait Vedant many years, thousands of years before we actually had in the Upanishads the clear exposition of Advait Vedant. She identifies her Atma with Brahma, with the ultimate Parashakti, the reality beyond the three words. So Vak does not mean just speech. So if you read a lot of Western expositions or translations of this Vak Suktam or Devi Suktam, they concentrate on speech because Vak does mean speech and they try to understand it only through speech. But 2, 3, 4 shloks down the line, they are forced to write, like this one is not very clear, I don't understand what this means. Simply because you are not to see it only as Vak. Go back to a proper bhashya like the Sayan bhashya and you will see that the Vak also means Abhivyakti. What does Abhivyakti mean? It means manifestation. So this is the manifestation of Devi. It is the Ankur, it is the Bij from which the entire manifestation of Devi and the cosmos comes. So these ideas are very similar, the Nastiya Sukta also has this. In this Devi Suktam, we see the entire cosmos as Vak Ambrini thinks that she herself is the entire cosmos. And what does she say? She says, these are some of my favorite shloks. So she will say, it's a strong, confident voice ringing across the ages. Aham Rudrebhi. See the first one. Then the next one is Aham Somam. Aham Rashtri. She is defining all the important things of society and saying, it is me. Rudra, I am Rudra. Som. Som was the nectar of the Rig Vedic period. So if it is Som, then it is me. Rashtri, the entire nation, the entire kingdom, that's also me. I am everything. And look at that last shlok and see what it says right in the beginning. Ahamev swayamidam vadami. It is I, myself, the creatrix, who says this to you. I am the one who strings the bow of Rudra for war. I am the one in whom is the sky, in my womb is the ocean of creation. My breath is vast beyond creation. So this Vag Ambrini sees herself as the cosmos. So this is the feminine principle which sees itself as the cosmos, and this is not to be found in any other philosophy of this world where the entire cosmos is thought of as a woman. Now, there is another very interesting sukta called the Shri Suktam. So, the Shri Suktam is in the Khilani. It is, the Khilani are those parts, those shloks which we don't know where they belong. So, they are just attached to the Rig Veda. So, unfortunately, we don't know which part of the Rig Veda they were from, who has composed it, we don't know all this. But we do know that it was part of the Bhaskal Shakha. And it is in the, so this is, you can say, the miscellaneous strokes of the Bhaskal Shakha. This is the Shri Suktam. So the Shri Suktam is, this Vag Ambrini is very, very metaphysical. The Shri Suktam brings it all down to earth in this Khilani. It starts with Hiranya Varnam Harinim, Suvarna Rajatas Rajam, Chandram Hiranmayim Lakshmim, Jatavedo Ma'avaha. So she is described, the cadences of this Suktam are absolutely mesmerizing. If you listen to it, Devi's image will rise up before you. It is effulgent, glowing, golden. It is green and moist, hot and blazing like the sun. It is a harbinger of happiness, giver of all that mortals can wish for, riches, prosperity, sons, grandsons, cows, horses, elephants, etc., etc., etc. So she is immanent, merciless power, but she is also transcendent beauty. She is the giver of everything in this cosmos. So, in the Devi Suktam and in the Sri Suktam, if you read the two, this is the encapsulation of the idea of women, of the idea of Stri in Indic philosophy. It is metaphysical. It is also very much down to earth. It encapsulates almost everything that you can think of in this world and all the aspects of Devi that we are used to. For example, we are used to Devi as Mahishasur Mardini, the fierce warrior. We are also used to Devi as Gauri, as Parvati, the giver, benevolent. We are also used to Devi as Saraswati. We are used to Devis who cut off their heads to feed their attendants. We are used to Devis, who preside over Garbhas. So there is a spectrum of Devis and spectrum of manifestations and facets of women that we are completely used to. So I will move on a little bit. This is the Rig Veda. These are, in my opinion, the foundational ideas about gender. And this is, it's a little bit more than gender equality. This is not gender equality. This is complete subsumation of everything else in the feminine principle. So it goes much beyond gender equality. Even Ardhanarishwar is a way of fusing that power, that Shakti, with that of a Purush. Otherwise, the entire cosmos is feminine. So where is the question of equality? It's a question of giving space to men actually. Because if everything is women, then you just need to give space to men. But these are very diffuse ideas, and these are very multifaceted ideas in both these suktams. As we go ahead, we come to something which is called the Markandeya Puran. In the Markandeya Puran, I don't like to get into a chronology of Indian compositions because we don't have that kind of chronological idea. For us, time is cyclical. So everything comes back. So I don't like this linear chronology, but well, just for sake of understanding, I will say that the Markandeya Puran is a little later, perhaps, than the Rig Veda and what I have been talking about. So in the Markandeya Puran is the Durga Saptashati. In the Durga Saptashati, Durga, the terrifying goddess, kills Shumba, Nishumba, Mahishasur. She kills all of these demons, and her power is to be worshipped by people. The Shakta tradition emerges from the Markandeya Puran, although it went on and there were many other people who contributed to it. Last great person was Raghunandan Bhatt of Bengal, of Mithila actually, who put in place the worship of goddess. Then you also have different goddesses who have become important in different ways at different times. So in Gujarat, it's a different goddess. In Assam, maybe it's Kamakhya Devi. Think about it. It is the body of the goddess which is seen as our entire country. Think of the 51 Shakti Peeths. What are they? They are the body of the goddess Sati. When she gave up her life because she was angry about the way her husband was being treated, to bring Shivji back to life, Vishnuji cut her body through a Sudarshan Chakra into 51 pieces and they fell across the subcontinent. So what are we doing? We are visualizing our very land as a woman. And it is also from there that the visualization of Bharat Mata comes. Now again, I have given you a very nice picture of everything, all power and Shakti and grace and everything. But what about reality? How are we going to understand all this in a real social sense? Because, it's people, there are bad actors everywhere, there are problems everywhere. So what happened when these bad actors came in and there were things, there were rigidities or there were problems? So Indic society has had a way of self-reform, self-introspection and self-reform. Reformers have been thrown up through the ages. They have talked of whatever is wrong and they have tried to correct it. Before I go on to the reformers, I will just give you a short kind of capsule of the kind of things that women did in the past. So they have always contributed to all aspects of society, including Grihasthi. Grihasthi and grihastha, that was the linchpin of society, that was the only productive part of society, and it was on that that everything depended. And the griha patni was the one who ran the grihasthi and who controlled the material resources and the spiritual resources of that griha. So that was one very important thing. Having children was another important thing. Remember, those were the days when children were welcomed. We didn't have this population control and children interfere with the freedom of women, you know, that kind of thinking was not there. So having children, children were very important for the extension of society. They still are, but we seem to have forgotten that. All these were important for women, but they were also intellectuals. So all of us, many of us who follow the Hindu Paddhati have got married. Now, who is the one who has written down that Paddhati of getting married? It is somebody who is called Surya Savitri. This Surya Savitri, this is also from the 10th mandal of the Rig Veda. Surya Savitri wrote down the entire system of getting married, and believe me, you, me, everyone who has got married through the Hindu Paddhati has followed what this lady wrote so many years ago. And I would invite you to read the Vivah Sukt to understand the strength, power, equality, and you know, it's a complete package. So I would invite you to read it. Lopamudra was a great rishi, and she also used to, according to some accounts, run her own Gurukul. So she was also a teacher. Then there was Sulabha, famously crossing swords with Raja Janak in the Mahabharata and beating him too. She was a wandering ascetic, so she was also an intellectual. There have been warriors and queens. Right from the Rig Veda, there's mention of Vishpala, who saved her own gram by fighting off intruders, and she lost her leg in that fight, and actually a prosthetic leg was attached according to the Rig Veda. Then you also have, you know, Kaikeyi was a great warrior. And then if I jump a few thousand years and come to the Kakatiyas of the 11th, 12th century, Rudrama Devi was a queen. Prabhavati Gupta of the 4th, 5th century, she and her brother Kumar Gupta, she married a Vakataka king and her brother was the Gupta emperor. Together they ran the entire country, Prabhavati Gupta and Kumar Gupta. Then amongst the Cholas, Sembhya Mahadevi, she was widowed at a very young age, probably in her 20s. She lived to be 100, and she was the guiding light of Rajendra Chola, of Rajaraja Chola. So that means the apogee of the Chola Empire was because of Sembhya Mahadevi. Now there is a very famous statue of Shiva doing Tandav, kept in front of CERN. I know all of us are very familiar with that statue of Shiva in a Tandav pose. She was the one who actually first conceptualized and created it and put it in one of the temples that she was renovating. So there have been also, you know, there's another one, Vidya of Kashmir. She was a queen, and she was quite a terrible queen. I mean, she was not somebody who I would hold up as a role model, but then, okay, she exercised power. There were also social reformers. So we know about Mirabai, we know about Sri Andal of Tamil Nadu, then Lal Ded of Kashmir. Like I said, they did everything. They were also, you know, wonderful playwrights. So a poet called Vijjika, poetess called Vijjika, has written the Kaumudi Mahotsavam, which is a historical fiction Sanskrit play written in the 4th century. You have so many, Tirumalamba of the Telugus, she wrote a Sanskrit play about some of the conquests of her dynasty. There are a number of names that I could give you, and I can also tell you that, you know, this is the higher picture. What about the lower picture? Did they do small things also, small important things? Yes. It is said that small weapons were made at home by women. They were also entrepreneurs and artisans. So for that, you will have to read the Jatak tales, you will have to read the Katha Sarit Sagar and certain other historical evidence. So this gives you an idea of the kind of things that women did, which was everything. There was nothing that they did not do. And important to note that they also performed yagyas, because it's often said that women did not have they were not educated and they did not have the power to conduct yagyas. Both are false. The Janeu or the Upanayan, which is now, it has now become God knows what, but in its pure form, it is simply a symbol of studentship. So if you were a student, you wore a Janeu. So an Upanayan was done and you wore a Janeu, and Upanayans were done for both men and for women, and women also went to Gurukuls to study. So they studied, they also performed sacrifices and yagyas, so that was also available to them. Now whenever, like I said, problems crept in. Then we have had reform. And this reform has come from so many women themselves. If we talk about rigidities relating to women, but also rigidities relating to the categories of social justice we spoke about, economic, social, political, cultural. Women have dealt with all this, not just with things which is within their purview or things which relate to women, but things which relate to greater society. I'll just give you the example of a very well-known set of social reformers from the southern part of India. These were the Alvars and the Nayanars. These are two sects of poet devotees who sang of liberation through an individual bond with the divine. All were what? Equal before the divine. Men, women, everyone was equal before the divine. So of the 12 Alvars or devotees of Lord Vishnu, Sri Andal, a woman, spiritual leader, is the most important. Then there were 63 Nayanars or devotees of Lord Shiv. Now these devotees included potters, hunters, fishers, merchants, unknown origin. So what are this? These are people from all walks of society who see some lack of justice, who see some problem and they step up to solve it in their own way. So these were the Nayanars. There were also women Nayanars, the very famous one being Karakai Lamma. And this Karakai Lamma was from the merchant class. So I hope that I have given you an idea, an intersecting idea of the way social justice operated with gender equity. The two were, intertwined because women took an interest in social justice and larger issues, and they were very much able to do that. The whole philosophy and theory of dharma, Samanya dharma and Raj dharma, was very much geared towards social justice. I have given you examples from practical historical times past. So the complexity and the push for the last person. Very famously, Gandhi has said that if you are ever in doubt about what to do, think about the poorest person, the meanest person, and think, will it help him or her? If it does, do it. So, these are the same ideas. Gandhi was also, after all, a product of the same civilization. A focus on the weak has always been very important for dharmic civilizations. On the weak, and we don't think of women as weak, we think of women as Shakti. There has also been a focus on women. So, we have a basis, a societal basis of social justice and gender equality. Whenever society falters, there are always reformers who try to bring it back to the desired level. Therefore, we can